time I found love.
Dr. Stedman, are you there?
I am.
Well, I've got 7 o'clock.
Okay, you're showing what you've got up there now is week 8's coaching, the coaching agenda.
Yeah, but
Okay.
so do we have an agenda for this evening?
No.
All right, so that's what I thought. I want
No.
I want to hit a couple items off of this one.
Okay.
And so I'll go ahead and welcome everybody. Welcome to the AAPTEL Town Hall. I have the 601 add-on faculty with us tonight. I saw Dr. Stedman, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Revis. I don't know if Dr. Crawford's with us or not. I also invited the master students. I know they're not quite that far along as well. Dr. Bullis is in a board meeting. He and Dr. Church, so they won't be with us tonight from 601. But welcome to our town hall for the AAPTEL tonight. So this is what we're going to cover Thursday night in our regular coaching session. So I'm going to kind of introduce it tonight, the AAPTEL, and get us started. And then we're going to follow up Thursday night. Is the reason I'm showing this. So tonight we're not going to dig as deeply tonight as we normally would. We try to keep these at 30 minutes or less. And in order to do that, we'll have to be brief. I do want to hit upon, before I start the AAPTEL, I want to remind you that you have completed, the add-on students have completed your AAPTEL, and the master students that have joined us, you should be close to completing yours as well. It's time to look at your competency folio. Now, again, that's different than competency analysis. You do your analysis at the end of the semester. You do it if you're doing task, you did it in AAPTEL task 5, and you'll do it in AAPTEL task 4. You'll do a written competency analysis. You'll also do that in task stream this semester in your DRF portfolio. That's separate, but I want to remind you that those of you who have completed the first of your 6 evidences, and the 2 that we're going to do this semester, you can go to your competency folio and start putting artifacts in there, and a brief description of what the artifacts are. Please remember, for artifacts, they're things. You can have a little bit of narrative, don't have much, but remember, they are things that represent the work that you've done. And in your class shell, you've got competency folio resources that tell you what those artifacts are and where you can find them. I'm not going to go back over that again, but I am going to remind you. Let me change my screen here.
Dr. Lamb, and I know you probably will, but as we're moving into the AAPTEL, you always do just an excellent just reminder that of the intentional gradual release as we're leaving the AAPTEL going into the AAPTEL.
Mhm.
To understand that we don't hold hands quite as much this time.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that kind of at the end as we talk about
Okay.
moving through the end of 601 and for the add-on licensure folks into 603 and for the regular master's folks 602. We do practice gradual release or intentional abandonment, whatever you want to call it. And so we will be doing less and less of the hand holding as we go. And that's why I want to remind you that this is the last time you're going to hear from me this semester in terms of don't forget to do your competency folio. We've gone over that multiple times. I'm going to show you one last time where it is and how to get in there. If you haven't created one, you'll need to create one. And again, those directions are in your class shell. But please remember when you sign into TaskStream, it is not here in your DRF portfolio. I've got multiples, you'll have one. Remember to access your competency folio. It's under folios and web pages. And if you don't have one, you'll need to use the create new and follow the video directions that are in your class shell. But again, you have 21 competencies over here that you've got to do three artifacts for each of those over the course of the time that you're in the program. Let me remind you again, you do not make but one of these and it lasts you the entirety of your program. 3 semesters if you're add-on, 5 semesters if you're masters. We keep building this folio of artifacts. Please remember that digital learning competencies, there's nothing new in this folder. It's just what they are. Remember that they are embedded. The 18 of them are embedded. If I can get it to go here. They are embedded in the 21 administrative competencies. So it says one of these 3 must satisfy the following digital learning competency. Please don't forget to do that and to highlight that and tell us which of these are digital learning competencies. This is a NCDPI requirement. It's also a CAPE requirement. Speaking of that, I'll share with you what I got and had to fill out today, which I have to do every year on you folks, is a spreadsheet from DPI where I have to attest that you are getting these 18 digital learning competencies. And I have to map out when and where you're getting them and in what form you're getting them in. So this is not something that we're having you do just as extra work. This is a requirement. In order for you to be licensed at the end of your program, we have to assure these folks that you have given us artifacts related to digital learning competencies, that you are doing that along with your studies in this program. And I have to track it for each of your, not only your class section, but also your internship sections. I have to track them, what we're doing with you to make sure that you are digitally competent in teaching and learning. And as I've told you before, you can take your competency folio when it's complete at the end of your program along with your transcript, and you can get your renewal credits for digital teaching and learning competencies as well. So please remember, it's time to start looking at your competency folio. I told you I would remind you, I am reminding you. But as Dr. Stedman reminded me, we're going to pull back and you'll be working with your coach now on your digital learning competencies inside of your regular 21 administrative competencies. So from this point going forward, you'll be working with that coach that you have that's along with your class to make sure that you get your required number of competencies each semester. You get your artifacts in there. So I wanted to make sure I gave you that warning. It's mid-semester. And so that's enough from that. So let's talk about the AAPTEL tonight. The AAPTEL is, let me close some of this stuff. All right, so here is the template that we use with you that you should use for your AAPTEL. Again, you will find this in your class shell under AAPTEL task and prompts. This is the last full, this is the last full template that you will receive. Next semester in 603, for you add-on folks, when you go to 603, the first of the evidences you'll do for me will be the OMA, or for the instructors in 603. It will simply be an outline that has just the task and prompts on it. It won't have any information in it. It'll have no examples. It'll have no explanation. Once you've learned the system, you don't need that. And then when you get to the second of the evidences in 603, to skip, we won't even give you this. It's up to you to make your own template. And from the rest of the program, that's the way that will work. So Dr. Stedman is right. This template is not as involved as the AAPTEL template. The one that comes after this one has nothing in it other than the directions. And then after that, there is no template. So you need to start weaning yourself away from the template on gradual release. You need to get to the point as a professional, when people give you directions, that you're able to create your own template and understand how that works. Folks can't hold your hand once you get your job. They'll expect you to be professional enough to do this on your own. So if you say, well, Dale, this one's not as involved as the first one you gave us, well, that is true. And there's a reason why. So let's work our way through this.
And Dr. Lamb, there will not be an AAPTEL example either.
Right.
Yeah, that's the AAPTEL example is the only one that we provide. But it follows the same format.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, it follows the same format. You've got to know, the major headings and those kinds of things. But yeah, there'll be no example. This template is not quite as involved, and there'll be no example. And then when you get to the OMA, it's just an outline of the task and prompts. You have to figure that out on your own. All right, so here we go. The purpose of the AAPTEL in the end is to develop a professional growth plan for your school. So what is a professional growth plan? Well, we used to call them staff development plans, or staff development models, or whatever you want to refer to them as. Professional growth plan is how you're going to get your teaching faculty at a school to the point where they need to be with their as empowered classroom leaders. That's the first step. So when you start this, you're going to have to do some research. You'll do a literature review regarding various teacher empowerment and leadership best practice from reputable scholarly resources. Again, Bulldog One, an Eric search, those kinds of things. Google Scholar, but not just Google. Now, I've got this highlighted for a reason. There is a reason why I highlighted this. This actually is two things. That sentence has two things in it, because there are two types of empowerment. Now, if you don't understand that from the very beginning, you will not be successful in your AAPTEL. There are two types of empowerment. When it says teacher empowerment and leadership, that's two things. So you have empowerment as a teacher leader, that's in your class, empowerment as a classroom leader in your classroom, and empowerment as a school leader. And so the seminal works that you will need to make sure that you have reviewed are Todd Whitaker for empowerment as a school-wide leader, and Robert Marzano as a empowered classroom leader. That's best practices, high yield strategies. So empowerment has two parts. I like to refer to them as Big E and Little E. If there are any NASCAR fans still in the house, there's very few of those left, but if there are, you'll understand that reference. Big E empowerment is school-wide leader, and that Todd Whitaker speaks to that. And that's things like teaching other teachers, being involved in curriculum, being involved in budget, those kinds of things, and eventually being in, there's 5 of them, and I'll show them to you in just a minute, eventually being involved in the hiring process for teachers. So here are, and these are more and more responsible as you go through. So the first level empowerment as a school leader is you have input or you teach professional development offerings at your school. The second part is you play a role in the school improvement plan. That means you're on the school improvement team. Then school-wide policy, that's curriculum, and then budget, and then the holy grail for being a teacher leader empowered as a school leader is that you sit in on interviews and hiring of new faculty members. So that's kind of the process of being an empowered school-wide leader from the teacher position. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to empower teachers to be leaders in the building, but we don't want to go the process for empowering which teachers to empower is not eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That's hope. That's not a plan. There has to be a plan as to who you select to empower as school administrators. What teachers do you want to be your teacher leaders? Well, it's real simple. You want your best classroom teachers to be the leaders in your school. If you're going to create a culture of teaching and learning in your school, the teachers that hold leadership positions throughout your faculty have to be your best teachers. You can't pick people who just roll the ball out, either figuratively or literally. You have to have great teachers being your teacher leaders. Now, and so the second part of empowerment is empowerment as a classroom leader. Well, how do you measure that? You measure it through Robert Marzano's 9 high yield strategies. Now, so here they are. Now, all evaluation systems in North and South Carolina spring forth from Marzano or McReal. Marzano is McReal. Now, your walkthrough document at your school may not look like this. And so if you have a walkthrough document at your school or district, when administrators do the 15-minute walkthroughs, you will use that. If not, you will use this. And so you will research empowerment. You will find out, oh, there's some of it is empowerment, it's school-wide kind of things, but some of it's in the classroom. Well, they're 2 separate and distinct things, but the link between them is we want to identify our best classroom teachers and then empower them in those school-wide leadership roles. That is the link between the 2. And so you're going to do in task 1, you're going to do a literature review of these, of empowerment, what it is, and you're going to make sure that you do research on Todd Whitaker and Robert Marzano. You can add others to those, but those 2 are your seminal works in these 2 areas. And then the third required part of your literature review is best practices in professional development, how to put together a staff development or a professional development plan. The guru there is Linda Darling Hammond. Again, there's newer, more modern stuff, but she is the founder of that discipline within education. Linda Darling Hammond, that's a hyphen. She speaks to how you put all this together in a professional development plan. So those are the people we would expect that you will review, and that your literature review will have be contained in your literature review. So, and so the candidate will conduct a literature review, and you will have these, of course, will be your headings. Would expect these to be your headings: building efficacy and empowerment among staff, results-oriented professional development, recruitment, placement, and mentoring of school staff, approaches to or for evaluating school staff, and teacher leadership and decision making. And then you will create a checklist based on research to aid in assessing current best practices in your school. Now, this is a misnomer that you can't just create your own surveys and walkthrough instruments. You have to use some that are already validated. So you will create that from what you find in your literature review, or you will use the one from your district. You can't just make one up on your own. Let me be clear in that. Even though it says create, it doesn't mean that you create it yourself. You create the system and you use the tools the methods that are already there. So here are my two that I've come up with. This is Whitaker's 5, and this is Marzano's 9. So those are the two instruments that I'm going to use with the faculty to determine who's being empowered currently and who's empowered in their classroom. That's what we're trying to determine. Now, using the checklist, you will collect data. So here's the rule of thumb on that. You can use a survey for empowerment as a school leader, Whitaker's. You can use a survey for that. You can simply ask teachers, what opportunity have you had in these roles? You cannot survey for best practices. You have to use walkthrough data. Now, we encourage you, if you're back in your building or even if you're remote, to sit in for up to 15 minutes on one of your colleagues' classes and make sure that you get their permission. We want you to learn how to use the walkthrough instrument that your district uses. And if they don't use one, use Marzano's 9 as a checklist of these things going on in the classroom. Now, you say, well, how many should we do of those? Well, 2 or 3. Well, that won't be a representative sample of what's going on. No, but you get with your administrator. They don't have to share names with you. What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify themes in your building that need to be addressed in terms of what we need to work on as a faculty in our teaching methodologies. And that's what you go to the walkthrough data from your school to find that out. We don't have to have names. We're just trying to figure out which of these things are being done and done well, and which of them aren't being done or aren't being done well. And so so when you got your checklist, you go out and you do your data, and then here's a simple way to do your survey. You can use SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics, whatever, Google survey, you can do that. And it's just a simple yes, no. And then on your walkthroughs, use the one for your district. And if they don't have one, use this one and find out, are these things going on in the room? That's what you do is you identify through your research, you identify these documents, you use them to collect data, and then you assemble a team of colleagues and you develop a growth plan. And your growth plan, here are the individual headings for your growth plan. And then you summarize it at the end using the same graphic organizer we've always used. And then you will write your competencies in task 4. And so you notice this one is shorter, more to the point. Again, we're going to do our research, identify our instruments. We're going to use those instruments to collect data, remembering that we can survey for teacher leadership school-wide, but we can't survey for best practices. That's an IQ test. What teacher, if you ask them, is going to tell you, no, I don't use best practices in my classroom? They're all going to tell you they do. So you've got to look at the walkthrough data, and we would encourage you to do 2 or 3 walkthroughs of your own to learn how that works when you go in. And it's not scripting a lesson like you're doing a complete evaluation. Just go in and see if these things are happening in that classroom. And then from that data, you present that data, and from there you build your plan. Your plan should go back to Darlene Whitaker. Your plan should have some one-on-one in it, or maybe your new staff or your staff that it isn't doing well should have some group work, and should have some whole group. But how much of those is determined by what your data says. If 95% of your faculty is using best practices, I wouldn't do a lot of whole group with them. I would do more individual coaching and put more professional development in for the newer teachers or the ones who aren't doing as well. I would focus on my group work in PLCs, where maybe once a month we bring in some strategies, how we address those individual high yield strategies in our classrooms, and we would share those in our PLC. Conversely, if only 5% of your teachers are using best practices, I'd do a lot of whole group instruction on teacher work days. And I would identify, similarities, and non-linguistic representation is always the one that teachers do the least. And so that would be the one, this one right here. Where is it? This one. That's, I would pick 1 or 2 of these every semester and share in PLC work. How do you teach this? How do you know, this is how I do it. How do you do it? Those kinds of things. And so your professional development plan should be reflective of your data. If a lot of teachers are using best practices, well, you do more one-on-one and more PLC work. If not a lot of teachers are doing best practices, you do more whole group and more PLC work. It varies with what your data tells you at your school. This is getting you into making some decisions. Everybody's professional development plan is going to look different, and it's going to be based on the relationship to the data that you have collected. That's what real administrators have to do. There's no handy dandy guide. You have to make those calls based on what you see going on in your building. That's really the thing that's most important that you learn this semester is that the data is out there, you collect it, you look at it, and then you have to make decisions based on that data about, oh, this is what I'm going to do. I see that we're not doing best practices, and we're really not, 2 or 3 of these individual best practices are not happening in classrooms. We better do more whole group where we cover that, and we better do more follow-up and PLCs on how to teach those individual high yield strategies, or what we refer to as best practices. Let me do a little terminology here. These are referred to as high yield strategies or best practices in the classroom. And so once we determine that, and who and how many people are getting school leadership opportunities, that's when we put together our best practices. Now, you cannot say, well, this person needs to be on the school improvement team. We're just going to get people to the point where we're going to identify people who should be doing the first level, which is teach other teachers. Those would be the people who, if somebody does a good job with, similarities and differences, they should be leading that section at your professional development. This is not a plan that we're coming up with. Again, we just want to be concerned with this one. This is not a plan that we build that requires any money or outside resources. This is using the synergy, the power, harvesting the expertise on your faculty to work on improving teaching and learning and building that culture in your building. So this is not, we need money to hire somebody. No, this is the person, Dr. Stedman's really good at homework and practice. And so he's going to cover that. Dr. Revis is good at cooperative learning. She's going to share that with her strategies with everybody in PLCs on that. That's what we're talking about here, is how to harness the expertise in your own building to improve your instructional program. And so this professional development plan is not going to rely on money or outside resources or some group of experts coming in. It's going to rely on the expertise in your building. That's what this professional development plan is going to rely on. And then once you write your plan, as we always do, we use the same graphic organizer. That shouldn't say staff or faculty. You should have names or positions. And then you will write the appropriate number of your competencies. And when I say the appropriate number, that would be 9. You did 12 of these when you did the AAPTEL. The 9 that you didn't do in terms of competencies, you will write that 9 in your competency analysis in task 4 of the AAPTEL. Let me say that again. You did 12 of these competencies, 12 of the 21. You did 12 of them with the AAPTEL. Don't do any of the same ones. You do the other 9. Now you can add more to it than that if you want to, but we want to see the other 9 represented in the AAPTEL. All right, so I'll stop my share. All right, I'm going to go to any of the faculty that's with us tonight from L601. I actually, in 2 minutes, I got my part done in 28 minutes. I'm going to turn it over to the faculty now for their comments and share what they'd like to share.
Dr. Lamb, I'd just like to say, with the AAPTEL, while we told you to begin thinking like an administrator, a lot of that came easily to you because you were dealing with the students, and as teachers, that's who you deal with anyway. When you go into the AAPTEL, the work with the AAPTEL completely requires you to take on an administrative role. So, again, gradually we are leading you into that. One of the things that we'll be doing, and we'll bring this out more during our Tuesday night sessions, is you will, we will show you how to take your teacher working condition survey in North Carolina, the advanced ed or Cognia in South Carolina, the South Carolina Elliott. We'll show you how to take all of that data, the most recent, and how to interpret that as you are working through some of the or working through the task with the AAPTEL. Again, you're going to begin, the AAPTEL will take you in an entirely new direction in your thinking, the thinking process.
Very good. Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Revis.
I would just say that your experience with your peer reviews and the APSL was like that groundwork of building that base of the scaffold to prepare you for this.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would just like to add, as with the APSL, we are going to start the APTEL with research. And I think if I could say, practitioners, sometimes we don't always start with the research, but an effective principal always looks at the research first. So the first thing you're going to do is do a literature review, a brief literature review on those 4 or 5 topics. So you know what should be happening and what the goal should look, what it should look like.
Okay, and let me say what the rest of the week's going to look like. Tomorrow night, we'll begin breaking some of this down for you tomorrow night, especially task 1, little chunks of it at a time. And then on Thursday night, you'll hear some of the same things, but it's by design. Each staff member is going, and Dr. Lamb's going to join in with us as well. Each staff member is going to take a section, and they're going to go into more detail in about a 5-minute conversation about each of the tasks. Now, it's important. I know it's a lot this week, but next week is basically considered, next week we will not come online on Tuesday night or Thursday night. It's basically considered, quote, spring break. So this gives you some cushion time. It's considered spring break, but that doesn't mean you're not supposed to work. You work. This gives you an opportunity to work without having to come online and gives you time to begin pulling your resources and everything that you need to get together for the AAPTEL and to put a plan in place. You now know the rigor involved in the work that you've got to do. You know what you've got to plan out. We're giving you that time to plan it out. Use your time wisely. Also, as Dr. Lamb said, this is an opportunity you've got next week to go ahead and to get those 12 competencies done for your competency folio. So.
All right, I think that's enough for the evening. We tried to stay on time here. We did a pretty good job tonight. Thank you all. Again, we'll be online with you again Thursday night. I'll talk more about the 2 instruments, your research, the instruments that you come up with. It'll be kind of a reiteration, maybe a little bit deeper tonight, but we'll do that. And other folks will have different parts. Good job on the APSL across the board. You've caught on. A lot of what you learned in the APSL will stand you in good stead for the remaining of the 5 evidences that you have to do. We're well underway in our journey, and we appreciate you being with us. And so for those of you in the add-on program, we'll see you Thursday night. Everybody have a good week. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. See you tomorrow evening.